The joys of the blank screen while you're wondering, is it going to go live? And is it going to be muted? We are live. Look at that. Live on a Tuesday night for Talk Time with TJ, Triple T, number 238 on July 21st, 2026. Welcome to Triple T. My name is TJ Zebel. I like to refer to myself as a professional problem solver, but I always follow that up with, no, I don't know everything. I just have a unique way of asking questions. I've got a great tribe to pick from. Got access to the internet, and that can be dangerous, but I've got a pretty good track record. I want to thank you all for joining us, for those of you on the call, and for those of you watching live. And that means every week I get to say, hi, Mom, up in Minnesota, there, yeah. And just got to spend a few days with Mom up there, so miss you already, Mom. And for the rest of you on YouTube, thank you so much. While you're on YouTube, I'd appreciate it if you would do all the YouTube stuff that doesn't cost you anything other than a few clickety-clicks, like click the subscribe button and smash the like button and ring the bell so you know when we're back on the air. And leave some comments. I would love to see more comments if you guys have a little bit of time. Also, if you see anything on here that you think would help somebody else, please share the videos. It's not for my glory, but I do this every week. We do this every week, show up, try and get some information out there, see how many people we can help with the challenges that they're up against. While you're out playing around on the internet, do me a favor and swing by my website, www.thetSWB.com. The Tall Skinny White Boy is what it stands for. Has since way back in the day before I graduated, which I found out at our class reunion this weekend, was a few years ago. In fact, way before the internet. So if you see anything other than Tall Skinny White Boy for TSWB, that is not me. I recommend you don't go there. Go to the TSWB, check out my website. You'll get to see some of the things that I am privileged to help people with, such as depression, anxiety, phobias, PTSD, grief. Get to work with athletes from beginner all the way up to the pro level. Get to help corporate guys with corporate coaching, because I found out the CEOs, COOs, and all those things, they're all people. And no matter how rich or how busy you are, everybody could use a little help. I also offer a free 30-minute consultation. That's right, you get 30 minutes of my time. We can chit-chat, see what kind of challenges you're up against. And at the end of that, if I feel like I've got what it takes to help you with your challenges, I will let you know. But I also promise you, if I think that we're not a fit, I will let you know. I don't want to spend our time, or don't want to waste our time and your money. And I will do my best to find one of my associates who would be a better fit for you, because my main goal is to get you the change work that you are looking for. Now that we got that out of the way, it's time to introduce the tie of the week. Bring up little Taz, one of my buddies I can associate with. Man, just right there in that little screenshot right there, kind of represents me quite a bit, right, Mom? Yes, and I always like to start off the week with seeing if anybody has anything cool to share from the last 7 days we were here. Anybody? I know that for those of you that are watching live, you're probably seeing myself in an avatar. I would love to have more people join us here on the live call. That way you can have the benefit of seeing the chats and those of you watching the recordings and stuff like that, you don't get to see the people that are not on camera. So sometimes I've noticed even watching the recordings, I'm like, and it looks like I'm talking to myself, which has happened before, but when the voices actually come out of the ether, that's somebody on the call, of course. And good to see Mark on the call, and Guillermo, and Duncan is on here. He's chatting it up with AT&T, so we'll send you some good energies, my friend. Just did our good stuff for the last 7 days. You got anything you want to share, Mark? Your mic's not on yet. The joys of working on portable. I almost thought that I was going to end up being on portable with you guys. Our power dropped a little over about an hour and a half ago. And they said that the power was not going to be on until right about this time. I was like, oh, that is going to make Triple T very interesting.
Hello.
Hello.
Made it.
Right on. Appreciate that very much, my friend.
Well, not so I wouldn't bend every effort. But I come from a long line of effort benders.
Yes, I know the feeling. I know a few myself.
Oh.
But
Beautiful dinner with the family. Great vacation. So that's what I have to report from the environs of Cape Cod.
Yeah.
We had some chowder.
It looks like Cape Cod is enjoying a little bit of additional humidity.
Needed rain.
Much
It's been
needed.
beautiful up to tonight. So
Very cool. Yeah, Tina, my wife and I went up to Minnesota for my class reunion, and we left the extreme heat of Dallas, Texas, so we could go up and enjoy Minnesota's heat wave, which started just before we got there and broke while we were heading home so we could come back to Dallas for an extreme heat wave here. But we got housing, we got AC, so I am very grateful for that. And it looks like it must be about time. I'll do a quick rundown for those of you that are new to Triple T or watching the recording for the very first time. It's a 2-hour show. First hour, I do my best to get through 3 topics that I've come up with for the evening. And at the end of the first hour, then we switch up gears. We open up the topic, open up platform, open mic, open platform. Anybody on the call can bring up a topic or a question, and I have the people on the call answer first because I like to learn as well. And after everybody's answered, if I feel like there's still something that I could add to it, that's when I toss in my 2 centavos. So I guess without any further ado, it is time for the topics of the week. Tonight's topics are comparison, relative, and flow. So jump right in. Comparison. Oh my. One of the great quotes, comparison is the thief of joy. And I know that we have covered this before a little bit, but I found it very interesting, of course, being at the class reunion, how easy it is to get stuck in comparison after so many different years. And comparison is often tagged tightly to judgment. And so as we're sitting there and I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing faces that I kind of recognize, but they don't quite look the same. And don't get me wrong, out of a class of 300 and I think 303 was our graduating class, we had a pretty decent turnout. And I'm not going to name any names because I would like to be invited to the next reunion without having to worry about who's got their sights on me with weapons. But some of our class aged very well, extremely well, and some not so much. And comparing what we remember them as and what they represent now, I caught myself a couple of times. And I had to remind myself, I don't know what they've been through. I don't know what their family history is for any type of diseases or anomalies or anything of that nature. I know that we've been through a lot, especially in the last 6 years after that lovely event that we're not going to discuss. And so as I'm looking around and realizing that I know that I was in the judgment sites with many of them as well. Anybody that knew me back in high school, I was a Motorhead partier. And all the comments in my yearbooks may or may not reflect that reality. And so when a number of them look at me and my wife, I'm sure they're like, well, how did he get from small town mechanic and bartender to where he's at today? And they, a good portion of them, have no idea what I went through to get to this point. And I also have some classmates that I knew quite well that we were pretty much in the same boat when we started, and they have done quite well for themselves. In fact, one of my classmates has done extremely well, has 3 kids, 9 grandkids, and is very popular in the area where I grew up. And I found myself for a short while comparing myself to him, going, well, how did he get so lucky? And I had to go back to, you're just comparing, you're judging, you're looking at, I know he's been through some stuff. There's some stuff that I do know, but there's still plenty that I don't know what they've been through. And you look at all the other things, the big house, the fancy cars. Are they happier? Who knows? Because is that fancy car paid off? Is that big house paid off? are they living paycheck to paycheck in that big house on the hill? One of the things I liked about when the concept of the millionaire next door hit me, and I realized that even in my tiny little hometown, population 187 people, I knew of at least 3 millionaires that I got to hang out with and enjoy being around. So when you can find 3 very successful millionaires, and I tell you what, only one of them you may have guessed to be a millionaire. The other 2 you would have, if you would have to have been around them quite a while and got to know them before you would have ever known they had that kind of money. And so I'm curious when you start looking around at the things that are running through your mind, and when you're seeing other things out and about and meeting people, what kind of comparisons have you realized you've done lately? Anybody want to share, or any ahas, epiphanies, or people that you know? Mark.
Yeah, I went to my 50th wedding. I'm sorry, wedding. My 50th high school reunion. And, again, these were 18-year-old graduates the last time I saw them from high school.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and of course, the school's moniker is, we create tomorrow's leaders. Well, first of all, we lost 100 of them, and it had nothing to do with that period of time that you don't want to talk about with the,
Yes.
but we'd lost 100 out of like 208 of the people I graduated with, and I was amazed. The different, like you said, it's I'm alive, I'm healthy, I don't have any artificial parts inside of me, and I was comparing these guys, and I was like, I'm probably the healthiest one of the bunch, so who won the race, basically, and
Yeah.
the fact that we had lost so many of the people I had known through high school was a real wake up call,
Yeah.
to our personal health, and I was pleased to, 10 years after I got out of high school, I started focusing on health, exercise, diet, nutrition, and the results are, some of the folks helping out thought I was there for my 30th high school reunion instead of my 50th. That's good. They said I looked that good. So as far as comparing, like I said, there was one fellow that had been very hyper successful, started companies and all that. But yeah, we just, like I said, it was just, a bunch of folks that, have gone their own different ways, and, I know my path, but I don't know anybody else's.
Yeah.
So who am I to judge? But they're all talking about their diseases that they've survived, the operations they've survived, the parts they've had replaced. And I'm sitting there and like, I got nothing. So,
Yeah, yeah. That's one conversation you're glad to say, yeah, you're the winner. I'm the winner. I'm not sure. And we had the table set up for the ones that we lost, and out of our 303, luckily we've only lost 18. And they were advertising this as our 40th reunion, which I'm like, that's not even possible. I'm only 35, so I don't know. The math ain't mathin', but looking around the room, there were a couple that validated it was the 40th. So, and yeah, like you say, it comparison can also help put things into perspective. You know, with you being one of the few that healthy, no added parts, no $1 million man or bionic man. That I met one of my classmates who had always seemed quite healthy, was walking around with a cane. And so I went up and said, out of curiosity, what's up? Well, I just had a hip replacement 8 days ago. All right. Well, you have my full respect. And yeah, okay. You're allowed to walk with a cane. But I also know that he also has my respect because he was on the fire department for many years and major into sports and stuff like that. So yeah, a few of those parts get a little worn out. And one of our watchers just sent me a text and said, the thing that frustrates me the most is realizing that I'm the same age as old people. I fully agree. Yeah, I kind of felt that way too. But one of the things that I brought up with a lot of them, because of course you're all sitting there and it's been a hot minute since we've been around. Some of them, some of them we only see at reunions because of where they live or something like that. And of course there was always that, hey, who's that? Okay, and who's that over there? And who's the one that's sitting by the one in the blue? And I caught him off guard a little bit, I think, because I said, wait and watch. Wait for them to laugh, and you'll see their high school face when they light up telling a story and they laugh. And for a second they're like, what? I said, just watch when they laugh. And as soon as somebody would tell a story or they would crack up, oh, that's so and so. Yeah. And you can hide the person inside of the older body, but when you get a bunch of people, like from your class, you all grew up for a certain amount of time, and you start telling those funny stories and that, oh my, remember that time when you, which my wife heard plenty of. Yeah, Tina understands who I am a little bit better now after some of the, she's like, did that really happen? I'm like, it may or may not have. Yeah, okay, yeah, it happened. How did you guys survive childhood? And of course, now I'm old enough that I can share some of these stories with my mother because it's been long enough that she doesn't have to, right, Mom? And Mom's like, well, I still got to worry about you. You're still my boy. I'm like, yeah, but yes, I survived so many things that the stuff you're worried about me going through now, that's why I can go through certain things now and go, I've been through a lot of stuff, and I'm still here. So I'm planning on keeping it that way. But that was the other, Holly got her hand up.
You can finish what you're saying.
The squirrel just ran off with it when I saw her. So,
Sorry. um,
yeah,
well, first of all, I'm absolutely loving what you were talking about, watching people when they laugh, that younger face comes in. Because I was thinking about, that's that concept we talk about of bringing your Chen inside your body. And it
yeah.
happens when you're laughing, and it happens when you're passionate as well. Get that person who loves to play the drums, put them on the drum set, and you're going to see a whole different set, and it's not just when you look younger, it's also when you look more attractive, when you are, and not just look more attractive, you're attracting amazing things. And I
Mhm.
was just thinking about how amazing it is that we can bring people to that spot just using the trifecta. And
Yes.
the person you may get to know by just by using the trifecta could be completely different than somebody everybody else knows, just
There.
because you
Thank you.
actually get to see that version of them. Um,
Yes.
and then just, I guess, a few other things. You were talking about the millionaire next door. We didn't, when I was growing up, I was in a neighborhood that most of the people in that neighborhood were not millionaires, but there was one lady who was a millionaire, and my mom knew it, and apparently not much of the neighborhood knew it. I don't know how she found out, but she was talking about, this was a lady who loved to make she hated waste, and she loved to make everything useful in some way. And so one of her hobbies was she'd go through the trash cans on trash day, looking to see if there was anything valuable that got thrown out that she could turn into something beautiful or whatever.
All right.
And she was
Oh my
talking about
God.
how
Holy
um,
shit, man.
one day, this lady was going through the trash, and she didn't dress well for that, obviously. You probably wouldn't dress well for that.
Mhm.
And one of the neighbors said, "Wow, look at that poor bag lady. I wonder how poor she is. She must really, you know." I just thought it was so funny. Like, it's just night and day. This is the richest lady in the entire neighborhood by a big margin. She owned half the neighborhood.
Yep.
Everybody thought she was the poor local bag lady. So um, I think that, when you're doing the comparison, you don't even really know what you're comparing against. You probably have a fictional thing. It's a good thing to remember that. Also, remember that just because you can compare one person's strengths to another person's weaknesses, that doesn't mean you're comparing their totality. If you actually sat down and wrote down all the strengths and all the weaknesses, there's places that one person's going to be stronger. There's places another person's going to be stronger. That doesn't mean they're overall a stronger person. And then I had a dream about this once, but it was this idea that anytime you're comparing yourself to somebody, zoom out and it will look like nothing. And
Mhm.
so that may sound bizarre, but just to make it concrete, if you're wondering how old you are, okay, compare yourself to, we just had the 250th anniversary of the nation. How old are you compared to the nation? Oh, wait, but people say our nation is very, very young. How is that compared to the, history of the world? Oh, but, the earth is kind of quite young. How old is the universe? When you put it into that, what you're looking at, the differences you're looking at are just a blip on the radar. When you zoom out, if you're on a graph, if you were to look at the age of the universe and then your age compared to that person, down the road, you wouldn't even be able to see the difference. Or if you want to look at wealth, if you want to look at the entire wealth that is in the world compared to, if you were able to mine all the wealth in the universe or the galaxy, if you're comparing your wealth to the person next to you, it's going to be a tiny blip on the radar. If, if you look at the, somebody who has the skills, all skill sets combined, and, compared to if you were able to master everything, compared to the difference in your skill set versus somebody else's skill set, once again, it's a tiny blip on the radar.
Yes.
So I think, like you were saying before, comparison is not necessarily bad. It depends on why you're doing the comparison. Are
Yes.
you doing the comparison because you want to learn? Are you doing the comparison because you're interested in diving deeper into the topic? Are you comparing because somebody's hired you as their coach and they want you to help them get to the next level? Versus, are you comparing yourself because you have a habit of wanting to make yourself feel inferior and you like to feel bad about yourself? You have that habit. Maybe like
Yeah.
is not the right word, but or on the flip side, are you comparing because you want to feel superior to that other person for some non-earned reason? Those are going to be very different. So, and then I guess the final thing is, for those who've read Mindset by Carol Dweck, she talks about the limited mindset and the growth mindset. And do you care? Do you care about actually getting better? Do you care about mastering things? Or do you care about looking like you're better and looking like you've mastered things? Because quite frankly, they always are going to be opposite. If you care what you look like, you will never master anything, because to master anything, you have to be bad at it before you could be good at it.
Yes. Always great stuff. Yes. And the funny thing is, my squirrels were holding up stuff while you were talking, and they didn't hang around. I was like, that's a great, yeah, thank you. Oh, where'd you go? And when you were talking about the lady who they witnessed going through the trash. Again, that's what I love about the millionaire next door. Yeah, the two of the millionaires that I knew back home. One, he always walked around in old, worn out coveralls, drove an old beat up Ford truck the way I found out he was a millionaire, I was working in the mechanic shop and he would bring it in. And even though the body looked wore out, he always made sure he had good tires, the brakes were good, the shocks were good, made sure we kept it running great. It ran like a top. It was old, had some dents in it, and the paint was faded, and he had an old seat cover on it. He didn't care. And it was my boss that actually pointed out, he goes, you know, that guy could buy this town. Comparison. Mark. Small button.
There we go.
There it is.
Someone said the only valid comparison that you should engage in is comparing yourself to the guy you were yesterday.
Yes. And I'm trying to think of the McConaughey. I think it was that said that his biggest hero is himself in the future, because the only person he competes with is the person he was yesterday. And if you keep that mindset and keep track of, well, who do I really want to be? That's the positive part of comparison. Who do I want to be? Well, you have to figure out who was I? Who am I trying to get better at? Where's the baseline? And compare it to where you are now. Another great way to keep yourself moving forward. Any other ahas, epiphanies? In fact, I just had go ahead, Holly.
You're allowed to finish your talk or your point before you call on me. You know that, right?
The point that popped in my head was Duncan, right behind him. He has all of these older stereo items. And if you compare some of the older amplifiers, 25 watts, and you'd be like, today they've got 250 watts per channel and 7 channels, and
Only on paper.
And you hook up them old box speakers to that 25 watt amplifier, and you hook it up to a nice record player, and the neighbors 2 blocks away are complaining that it's too loud when you crank that baby up. Then you take that 250 watt amplifier and you hook it up to your iPod, and you hook it up to these great little bookshelf speakers that are rated for 500 watts, and you crank it up and it sounds like, yeah, that's a great system. Oh man, my gosh. Please turn it down. My ears are burning.
Yep.
More comparison. Holly.
Man, that hit me very hard. So, also, I had this thought too. At work, I work with some very young people, only a couple of them, but this thought of when you hear somebody else comparing you, does the person even have the knowledge they need to make a comparison. And the reason I bring up the young people is they have some very funny ways of estimating the ages of the rest of the employees. Like, for instance, we had an 18-year-old who was estimating one of our coworkers, who I look at and I'm like, yeah, you look like you're in your late 20s, early 30s, which, I think is about where he is. And she thought he was 50, because she saw like one gray hair in his hair or something. It's like, so, you may have somebody like, I don't know, let's say you specialize in speakers, and you may have somebody who knows nothing about speakers who's like, I think you suck at your job. Do they even have the ability to know that you suck at your job? Or maybe they asked you to do something that's literally impossible, and that's why they're judging you, and it's really them who just doesn't know how to judge. So be careful how much credit you give to the judgment of others, because granted, sometimes it's valid, but a lot of the times the person who's judging you doesn't even have a clue what they're talking about. And then just one other thought about, we were talking about the secret millionaires. I think a lot of people too, when you're comparing what makes somebody successful and rich, they don't, they think, oh, it's just about, it's income. And I was just thinking, when TJ was telling that story, that's that millionaire mindset of, so first of all, a lot of it is about, they say that the average person, no matter how much they make, they spend the same percentage of their income. And so the thing is, if you spend 110% of your income because you get more money and you just get more debt, if you started making $1 million a month and you kept that same percentage, the more you make, the poorer you get. Whereas the rich person, even if it's just 90% and they're keeping 10% back, the richer, the more income they get, the richer they get. So the first step is saying, okay, what percentage of my income am I going to spend, whatever it may be? But I think on the flip side, people don't realize, some people think that I'm also going to penny pinch my way into being rich. And there is a certain level of, if I'm generous, putting generosity out into the universe means generosity is going to come back to me, that law of attraction. And then also, yes, I'm going to be careful with my spending, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to spend on quality, because I'd much rather spend money on something that's going to last and know my investment per dollar is still better, even if it costs a little more up front. Now, granted, that's all about what you can afford. So, if you're early in the process, I'm going to spend 90% and I'm going to be generous with my 90%, but maybe that means I'm just going to donate a can of soup to somebody because that's all that I can afford right now. That's fine, as long as you're tailoring it to what your circumstances are, because it's more about the energy you're sending out than anything else. Anyway, my theories, which I could be completely wrong.
Yep. Mark.
To add on to what, it's keeping up with the Joneses. That's an element of comparison. And, the statistics are that the average American spends 125% of their income.
Yeah.
Keeping up with the Joneses. Gotta have the latest iPhone. They go into debt because they're always comparing themselves to everyone else.
Yep.
So
another one that popped up while you were talking, Holly, was how the monkey compares itself to the fish, thinking the fish is so stupid because it can't climb a tree to grab a coconut. And yet the fish thinks the monkey is stupid because it can't hold its breath underwater as long as the fish can. Which I'm going to take this opportunity to segue right into topic number 2, relative, which you got to keep it relative. How properly are you doing the comparison? And Dave, that's watching on YouTube, said, it's amazing what your life looks like from someone else's perspective. Let that sink in. It's amazing what your life looks like from someone else's perspective. But they have to understand and know what your background is, what your baseline is, where you come from, what your goals and settings are to keep everything relative. Again, just like I talked about with the stereo systems over at Duncan's. You know, I worked with, big shock. You look back here and I have the understanding between all the different ones. And when I was selling stereo systems, high-end systems and all that stuff, one of the things I did to make a relative sale, when people would come in and say, I want a stereo system, I would say, do you have yes, it was CDs back then. Do you have one of your favorite CDs in your vehicle? If they did, I would have them bring it in so that they could understand the difference of what I'm selling relative to what they were seeing or what they had heard about on the news. Because back then, Paul Harvey was on the radio, and Paul Harvey could sell you anything. He could sell you a stick. It would be the best stick ever, and everybody would rush out to get that stick without keeping it into relative understanding of why they wanted it or what it was being compared to. Any ahas, epiphanies, comments on that part? The other reason I brought this up, of course, with the class reunion, we were basing a lot of there were so many things that we were basing our comparisons off of, related to how we knew each other 40 years ago. And some of the people there, I hate to say it, still had their same air of energy that they did back in the day. And the interesting part was Tina picked up on a couple of them, not because I pointed the people out, not because she was talking to other people when a certain person would come up, and the way they acted. My wife, without any relative comparison or history, told me her thoughts on that person. And she was correct on a couple of them. And said, well, is that how they were in high school? Yep. Time had not taken that particular ingredient out of their personality complex. We'll leave it at that. And I'm curious, Holly, go ahead.
Oh, just a couple things I was thinking when you were talking about this. First of all, you were talking about selling something and you could sell whatever, it will be the best stick ever. But one of the things I think is interesting is if you buy into it and your belief system is that that is the best stick ever, it will genuinely be the best stick ever too. So it is kind of, that placebo effect of, hey, if I tell you that this pill is going to cure all of your anxieties and all of your health issues, there's a decent chance it will cure all of your anxieties and health issues, whatever it may be. Now, granted, it's not 100%, but anyway, a little bit of that. And then also, you were talking about, meeting people and maybe not knowing them before, but you get kind of that like window into their soul. I was just thinking about how important it is for people to do the balance of listening to your gut, but also, knowing that sometimes the gut is wrong. And so, if you're in a place where maybe you're in a situation where it's dangerous, listen to your gut, because even if it's wrong, it will keep you safe. It's better to land on that edge. Whereas if you're in a very, very safe area and maybe you're on a jury and you're trying to determine if somebody's guilty, maybe, actually follow the evidence and don't just assume somebody's guilty because your gut's telling them they're guilty. It's going to be context dependent. So, it is okay to question. Your gut is going to get things wrong. But it is amazing how often in those first 10 minutes we know something that we then talk ourselves out of later. And that's how we end up getting in trouble because and our gut our gut is determining it from something real most of the time. It's just we override it because we want to believe in something, or that's how you get scammed. You want to believe it's true even though your gut tells you this is too good to be true, it can't possibly be real, as just an example. So
Yep. And right along with what you were saying, that's why it's our brain has been wired to know that it's much better to mistake a stick for a snake than it is to mistake a snake for a stick. Mark.
Yeah, I was just, again, things are, again, going back, it's the advertising. Like I said, we're told that if we don't have something, the latest version, that somehow we're behind the times. And I've been doing a deep dive lately into the Amish and how they do things, and they don't even have TVs, so that they don't get the programming. They don't
Yes.
get, and they have, they developed patterns, ways of doing things that are very successful, but they weren't told that the vinegar, the baking soda, and the hydrogen peroxide were all you needed for cleaning. They were, like the housewives in the 50s, you needed 27 different, chemicals under the sink to clean, for every single thing. So it's all relative. They didn't get that programming that, oh, you got to have this one for cleaning the oven. You got to have this one for cleaning the counters. You got to have this one for cleaning the bath. And but it's all relative. They didn't, they found something that worked. Maybe it doesn't work as fast as, oh, you got to do the latest and the greatest, but it's all relative. They their methodologies work, and they, like I said, they don't need to continually upgrade their life to chase, relative prosperity.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
Again, it's like I said, it's they're not comparing themselves, to the average American family.
Well, that's why travel is so important. One of the things that I learned with the travel that I got to do when I was 20, I went over to Europe for a year traveling around and realized that it's really hard to build your baseline super lofty when you realize you've only seen this much. And that wonderful saying, the more you know, the more you realize how little you know, makes it even easier to keep things in perspective in relation or, relativity to where you're at. There are so many people, and I'm sure we've all met at least one of them, that has such a minute view of the world. And because of that, they know everything. The problem is they know everything about their tiny speck of the world. And because of that, they believe they know everything about the world. Hence, social media. You just ask them. You don't even have to ask them. You just put out a topic, and they have no problem sharing what they don't understand is all of their knowledge, which is that much. Any other ahas, epiphanies, comments on this before we try and sneak one more topic in for the evening for a triple play? Yes, no, maybe so. Well, let's do it. Flow. Final topic, flow. And this one came with understanding the amount of things you can accomplish once you get into the flow. It's almost like the blinders, everything kind of falls into place. And the trick of it all, I'm sure many of you will agree, is figuring out how to get yourself into that flow. I know, I've had projects where one that just popped up, the squirrel's over here going, this one, was I did a project outside involving flagstone and laying down flagstone. And if you have never done a project putting down flagstone, pass. Hire somebody to do it. That's all I can say. It's like somebody gave you a puzzle to put together. The only problem is the puzzle pieces are from 27 different puzzles, different thicknesses, different colors, and you're just supposed to try and put it together. And to say I struggled and got frustrated trying to get that project going, I could not get in the flow. I had my brother-in-law trying to help, and same thing. We would go for a little bit and just get frustrated. And finally, one evening, what it took that time to get in the flow was I got frustrated and went, time to get it done. And I got into the flow and knocked that thing out. I mean, I could walk over and I had all the pieces laid out, and I would just go, and you go there, and you go there, and this one goes here, and this one goes here. And it took me about 4 weeks, 5 weeks to finish it in 20 minutes. Because it took me that long to figure out how to somehow get myself into the flow of it. Any comments, ahas, epiphany? Mark?
Yeah, again, people use different terms to describe it, being in the zone,
Yes.
being in the flow. It's, again, my understanding of it is relaxed concentration. You have to be focused, but you have to be very relaxed. You got to get those two brain waves to align. And when you're in the flow or in the zone, it's not that you're moving at supersonic speed. You're not Superman. It's just the rest of the world seems to slow down.
Yes.
I wasn't the tallest, I wasn't the quickest, I couldn't jump the highest. But as soon as, when I was playing basketball and I'd get in that flow state, I knew what the guy that was bringing the ball up court was going to do. So I was, so if he made, he's going to pass or he's going to shoot, I knew what he was going to do before he did it.
Yeah.
So I was in that flow state because he was moving in slow motion and I was just moving at normal speed. So I'd block a shot or I'd get a finger on a ball, I'd tip it, you know. Um, there's been a whole study, there was a NOVA about getting into that zone with, in groups in industry and the military. You want to get in that flow state. And there's a lady that teaches it. She was, um, she brought in a bunch of amateur archers. This is the story real quick, and gave them professional equipment and had them practice. And then she brought in and she measured their brainwave patterns, and and then she got the champion archer of all California, and she noticed that when he was, when he let go when he released the arrow, he hit the center of the target every time, but he didn't do it until those two. I think it's the delta and the theta wave when they
Mm-hmm.
met. Okay, so they taught all these amateur archers that were all over the target. They had a little buzzer on their head, and taught them a simple relaxation scheme, and they could only release the arrow because it would be like a buzz that would be on their scalp when they were in
Yeah.
that state. Okay, and within an hour, all the amateur archers were hitting the center of the target because they were in the flow, they were in the zone.
Yeah.
Okay, and she teaches groups, she teaches the military how to get into that, that flow state, that zone. It was very interesting. Nova. It was years and years ago, and
Great.
but that's when you're in that state. Like I said, they teach cops that actually
Yeah.
do a hypnosis thing with them, and they use a keyword, Shazam, because they're in a sketchy situation. But all the bad guys start moving in slow motion, and the cops moving at normal speed. So, uh, yeah, that they were teaching police that they would that hypnotic thing of getting into the zone.
Very
Uh,
cool.
all right,
Yeah.
I got to run along. I got to get back to the family. I'm glad I could jump in. You guys have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you guys next week.
Thank you so much for your time, my friend. Tell the family I said hi.
Yeah, I will do that. Take
All right.
care.
You
Take
too.
care, peeps. Bye bye.
Bye. Holly.
And everything Mark was saying is even more reason to do the flow state. If you want some resources for flow state, I also recommend The Rise of Superman is a book by Stephen Kotler. It talks a lot about scientific studies they did with the flow state, how to get into the flow state. A couple takeaways that I do remember from that book. First of all, flow state is like a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger it gets. So, what you're able to do in the flow state varies depending on how much you do it, how long you stay in it. But they did measure people who'd been practicing the flow state for quite a bit. They could be up to 500% more productive. And Mark was talking about they're also more accurate. They're also all this other stuff. But there are a couple things. First of all, getting into flow state is one thing, but actually the biggest key is staying in flow state.
Yeah.
So, if you're answering an email, that takes you out of flow state, answering a text, even just hearing a text. So it's all about blocking off the space. Also, they recommend that you don't go longer. This is if you've worked your way up to it. You don't go longer than about 4 hours because you're accessing more resources. So one of the keys with flow state is also making sure you give yourself recovery time. Flow state is not meant to be 16 hours a day every single day. But if you're 500% more productive, if you think about it, now 2 4-hour chunks, on one day, if you work 5 days in the week, you could get 5 days worth of work done in one day. You have space for recovery. So yeah, The Rise of Superman has tons of great things in it. But also, if you want ways to get into it, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards is a really, really good book about it, talking about, and she recommends you always set a timer because the flow state, you will be blind to time.
Yes. Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but if you give your mind permission to not have to keep track of time and say, you know what, I've set a timer, you're good for the next 2 hours to be in the flow state. Your body's going to release a lot more into it. And she talks about, drawing upside down so you can see things, looking at your hand and, paying attention to all of the little markings on your hand. There's all sorts of amazing techniques but a flow state is primarily a right brain state. So anything you could do to get into that right brain. And as we talked earlier, Chen, anything you could do to bring your Chen in is going to make it even more powerful. And Chen, for those who don't know, is anytime you're in your passion, anytime you're in your love, whatever that may be.
Great stuff. And yet finished right on the top of the hour, which means that it's time for us to switch things up. And if you just joined us mid show, or if you're watching for the first time and you missed the announcement earlier, it's time for us to switch it up, and it's open mic, open platform. Anybody on the call can bring up a question or a topic, and I let the people on the call answer first. And y'all are allowed to keep the conversation going on any of the topics that we already brought up, but if you've got a topic or a question for the group, please bring it right now. Who's got something?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, cool. What you got?
I have been noticing even more lately. It's been happening a lot, but even more lately, that like it's this shift that's going on in the planet. This intense energy shift. The fear that people have about change. There seems to be a lot of turmoil all over the place, and it's affecting things that should not be affected. Like I was on the phone for hours today. I had to call Mint Mobile, my cell service, AT&T, other places. Blatant errors. Last month I called AT&T, and they had raised my rates, and the guy there said, "Oh, we'll cut it from 75 to 50, and we'll give you twice as much speed." I'm like, "Oh, fine." I look at my bill today. It was, instead of 75, it was $103. I'm like, so I have to call up, and it's so frustrating. Besides the error and taking my time, it took me over 20 minutes to get a live person on the phone. You know,
Yep.
They intentionally make that tree so difficult to navigate. You know, press this button, press that button. If you miss one, it like terminates the call. So anyway, it's so frustrating having to get on the phone and talk to these people, and there's no answer. Like, you know, you're AT&T, you're Mint Mobile. You should have state-of-the-art, cutting-edge technology. This shouldn't happen, right? Yeah. I sign up for service. You charge me. It's automatically debited. I should never have to call you people. I had to call Mint Mobile 3 times in the last 3 months, once a month. They keep saying, and every time, of course, you talk to somebody, you get a whole different story. Oh, the last guy was wrong. Really? He was wrong?
Yep.
Now you're telling me you're right, and if I hang up with you and call back and speak to somebody else, they're going to tell me you were wrong too. So anyway, I'm assuming that some of you guys, especially in your profession, may be dealing with this kind of thing. I find it really very challenging to keep my head on straight and to keep the steam from coming out of my ears sometimes. So I think part of this whole thing is just understanding maybe what's going on, and things are really in flux, and like parts are becoming unstuck, unglued. You know, maybe this is part of this whole thing that's going on, is things have to separate, right? It's like when you take a car apart to replace the heater core behind the dash, and you have to take the whole car apart and mess things up and then put it back together. Maybe that's what we're going through. So is anybody else experiencing any craziness? And that's not all. I mean, it's like all over the place too. So anybody else have any stories or whatever to tell?
Holly's got her hand up.
All right.
I'll probably have to be careful how personal I get this, and now I do have a lot of theories versus what's actually established in fact. So I think there's 2 interesting ways to look at this. One is energetically, and the other one is mechanically. So just energetically, and once again, you know, some people may say, "Oh, astrology, I don't believe any of that." And I was one of those people not too long ago. But there are a couple very interesting things happening in astrology right now that I've been tracking. One is that Pluto is changing signs. It just barely entered Aquarius. And it's interesting what you described, because Pluto is the planet of burning down what doesn't work.
Really?
To clear space for something else. So I do
Okay.
think that, if we've got a lot of, Pluto was in, what's the sign that comes before Aquarius? It just entered Aquarius, basically. And you'll hear a lot of people talking about the age of Aquarius, but so if you see a lot of, I do think that maybe we're prepping for something. Also, so in astrology, you've got your slow moving planets, you've got your fast moving planets. And this, even though astrology and astronomy are very, very different, they do have this relationship in that we're talking about the same planets and we're talking about their literal movement through the sky in relationship to the Earth. So, you're going to have your planets that are close to the sun move a lot faster, your Mercury, your Venus, whereas, Pluto's way out there, and some of them are not even considered, planets. Like Pluto's no longer considered a planet, but Chiron as well. Saturn's, could be more in the middle. Jupiter's could be more in the middle. So Pluto is the planet of burning what doesn't work. It's the planet of death and rebirth. And so whenever you have a planet, especially a slow-moving planet, that's got a big emphasis, when they get to the end of a degree and the beginning of another degree, that tends to give them kind of a supercharged energy. Another planet that's moving is Uranus. Uranus is the planet of big shocks, of sudden movement. And it just changed. It just entered Gemini. Now, once again, people might look at this. Renee put in the chat, yes, it feels like manufactured chaos in Pisces. Oh, gosh, sorry. Let me turn that off. But yeah, so there's something coming up. I can't remember what it's called. It's the something basket. It's the name of the person who discovered it or who noticed it.
Yep,
is coming up. We're going to have a whole bunch of planets lining up in a very interesting way that's going to supercharge a whole bunch of stuff. So I do believe, and then once again, this is just personal theory, I do believe that our universe is at a place energetically that's preparing for the next phase, and preparing for the next phase often means blowing up the current phase. But just mechanically, and I'm interested to hear, what other people are, saying. Clearly Renee's got some stuff, TJ's got some stuff. But just mechanically, at one point I was an economics major. And I'll try to keep this, in theory more than anything. We talked a lot about different kinds of markets. And so you have your free markets, free private markets, which is when you have lots of competition. You've got other things besides this, but we're just going to talk about this kind of market. You also have oligarchies and monopolies. And I used to think monopoly literally meant one company. That's it, period, end of story. But I recently discovered that legally, in order to have a monopoly, all you have to do is have one company that controls over 50% of the market. So you can have other companies in there, but if one company controls over 50% of the market, you have a monopoly. And an oligarchy is where you have a handful of companies that control over 50% of the market. Okay. And I don't know if people realize how much this has happened, but if you look in our world right now, the number of markets that are monopolies and oligarchies is getting ridiculous. And this might be, once again, one of those, like, at some point it's going to get so strong that people are going to rebel. This happened with the robber barons back in the day. This is not something new. This is a pattern that happens a lot. But, if you look at butter, the company, because, you have this corporation owns this corporation or owns this corporation, but something like 90% of butter are all made in the same factories. They just put different labels on them and maybe have slightly different recipes or different requirements or whatever, but they're all made side by side in the same factories. And anyway, so what you're pointing out, when you have a public or a private free market where you have so many, like a restaurant business, if that restaurant treats me poorly, I'm just going to not go there anymore. So they have an incentive to behave well. But as soon as you become a monopoly, that's when you start doing things like, I'm going to give my customers the runaround, and they're going to pay all these late fees because they can't get through, and they're just going to decide not to bother to call in. Or I'm going to jack up prices, and nobody's going to complain because, they have nowhere else to go.
Right.
That all depends on somebody having nowhere else to go.
Yes.
And the reason they're able to get away with it, we are seeing the symptom of the number of monopolies and oligarchies that are currently in our, and we have something new too. I don't know if you remember Parler for a while back looked like they were going to become a competitor to Twitter. And in order to shut that down, Amazon kicked Parler off the servers that they were renting from Amazon. Apple shut them out of the Apple store. Google shut them out of the Google store so that you couldn't download Parler on your phone anymore on either Android or... So it's this interesting thing. We are living in a very interesting age where not only do we have monopolies, the monopolies will collude with each other to protect each other from competition and stopping having their monopoly power. So I don't think it can last. I don't think a market with this many monopolies and oligarchies can last. I think we're starting to see Pluto and Uranus, shaking the foundations of these systems so that they, we're going to, I hope personally that we're going to see the breaking point. But I just think it's interesting to see it both from the mechanical side of how it works and also seeing it from the energetic side of what's going on. And also, if you want to do your piece, and I think a lot of people here do your piece to fight it, set up competition. If there's a legal way that you can set up competition, that's the first step to making it so these monopolies no longer have monopoly power. Granted, it's sometimes easier said than done.
And don't you think speaking up too? I find that a lot of people nowadays, especially young people, they don't ever complain. They don't ever comment. They don't, they get horrible service or bad meal or whatever, be it a restaurant or a service station, or overcharging them or online service. People don't complain. Very few. I complain, and I also will comment positively if they've done a good job as well. And I find that when I complain, it's like now I'm the a-hole. It's like they're so used to not hearing it that I become the jerk. Oh, listen to this guy, nobody else complains, even though they know that their service is subpar or the product is subpar. That's life, man. It's like, what do you want? Perfection? I just want good value for my money. That's all. I want you to deliver the good or service that I paid for.
But I think what you just commented on is is what they're afraid of. The judgment of being the complainer.
Yeah.
And they're too afraid of it's not even so much non-confrontationalist.
Yeah.
It's becoming the passive-aggressive non-confrontationalist. They'll talk to their friends about, oh, this really sucks. Well, what are you doing about it?
Just complaining.
This really sucks. Yes. Yeah. Well, call them up. No, because then
they won't like me.
They won't like me.
And I'll look bad. And God forbid anybody online should see me or hear about me complaining. Then all my pseudo friends will go away.
Yes. And Holly, it's the first name to the basket phenomena they're talking about starts, I think it's like Bartle's basket or something like that. And you're right.
That sounds right.
It's named after the person that discovered it. And it's the exact opposite of the planet alignment in that special year, 2020. The planets all had a weird alignment in 2020, and we all know how much fun that was. Yeah. And so this one is a different alignment, and they are predicting, if you find it, Holly, the description will tell you there's going to be a lot of changes, a lot of awakening, a lot of pushback from the masses for positive change, as in we've had enough. Holly.
Just because you were saying it, so yes, it is called Barbolt basket. And it may involve others, but these are the ones just a quick Google search gave me. It involves 4 major outer planets, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, aligning at exactly 4 degrees of their respective signs to form a basket-shaped cradle. Yep. So those are some pretty big hitters. Like I said, Uranus is the planet of shocks. Pluto is the planet of getting rid of what doesn't serve you. Neptune is the planet of illusions and dreams, and Jupiter is the planet of expansion. So that should be a very interesting combination. Also, yes, I 100% agree that the complaining helps. Also, I know people don't believe that their vote counts for anything, but if the government enforced antitrust laws that are already on the books, it probably wouldn't take very many key people in government being willing to do that. Our lives could change significantly too. So never underestimate the power of feedback and getting involved.
Yep.
And Our listener Dave sent me a text. You're just not tolerant. I don't tolerate that comment, Dave. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and we've gone through enough. I'm not apprehensive, but I am. Knowing what we've all survived, I'm actually looking forward to it with a little bit of kind of like getting on that new roller coaster. You know you survived, but it could be a wild ride. Any other ahas, epiphanies on this one? I think one of the things I would recommend is putting some really good thought into what areas do you want improved in your life? And what, as long as we're talking about tolerating, what areas are you fed up with? You no longer want to tolerate, and what are you willing to do to get past that point? July 19th through the 22nd. Yes, that's what we're going through right now. One other thing that I've noticed with quite a number of people that I've talked to and a couple of clients is a lot of body aches.
Yes, sir.
Joints, tendons, stuff like that. And I've found it true enough to be true with, there's a lot of things going on right now. You look at the weather. How many records are we setting right now? You would think after a certain amount of history that we shouldn't be able to be setting new records.
Yeah.
And yet here we are. So, and I'm not going to turn this into some political baggage thing, but there are certain terms about, this and that about the climate. I think it's more than just Earth. There's too much stuff happening uniformly for us to think so small that us little ants on this marble have created all of these things that are happening the way they are. And that could just be me. If you think I'm completely off my rocker, you can stop typing and give me some other proof. But any other comments, epiphanies on that? Is it time for another question, another topic? Holly.
I've got a question that's come up a few times this week. As I mentioned, I work with a number of younger people, and something that seems to be coming up over and over again is how many things that used to be considered basic life skills they've never had a chance to learn. And so I just kind of wanted to throw this out there. If somebody from a younger generation is watching, what are some of the basic life skills from our generation that each of you would recommend they learn if they ever get the chance?
Well, sadly, we've only got 40 minutes left, so we'll try and condense it. Who wants to start? Yes, Renee put in the comments, cooking, reading, comprehension. How about understanding money? How about Renee again, general house cleaning, driving a manual transmission,
Using a dial phone.
yeah. Yeah. What else we got? Writing with a utensil. That doesn't include spelling. Renee, driving at all. A lot of younger folks have no desire to drive. Correct. And it's getting worse and worse, especially with the dial-a-ride.
Yeah.
Holly.
Just going to add something to my question too, because I agree with all of these, and to me they seem self-evident. But maybe add what is the value of learning these as well as you're going through the list.
Good question. Driving, of course. I've had this argument with quite a few younger ones, and they've come up with viable answers as to why they don't have to learn how to drive. Renee, great answer. Driving equals freedom. But my answer to them was, we don't live in Europe. We live in an expansive area. You don't have to own a vehicle, but you better darn well in this day and age know how to operate one. You don't have to own a manual transmission vehicle, but you darn well better know how to operate one at some level, especially for those that live in areas like Minnesota and Montana and Wyoming and far, North Dakota, South Dakota, that whole upper stretch where winters can be life-threatening. Not just bad, but life-threatening. And if you are one of those where I've got Uber. Everybody can drive. I don't need to learn how to drive. Okay, so you're out and your Uber driver's taking you from someplace to out in the boonies, and they have a medical emergency, a seizure, a heart attack, a diabetic, they pass out, and it's major blizzard moving in. If you can't operate that vehicle to get the two of you to safety, it may be the two of you being found popsicles. Right back to, I don't want to learn how to drive a stick. I said, you have to understand the concept behind it so that if that same scenario shows up, you may not be proficient at it, but hopefully you're not going to, A, destroy the vehicle by trying to rev the motor and push that funny stick into some position and rip up the transmission or burn out the clutch, but at least you can go, okay, I remember I got to do this, I got to do that, and you may kill the motor 3-4 times, but after a certain little bit, hopefully you can get on the road and get the two of you to safety. Cooking. Why should you learn to cook? A, financial reasons. When you compare the cost of cooking your own meals from ingredients, not from something that you toss into a microwave, you can live much healthier and feed yourself much longer by cooking. And of course, the quality of the ingredients between the fast food and cooking with actual healthy ingredients. Who else has got some stuff? Come on, you guys can jump in. This is your hour. One class that I teach big time is home maintenance. And I always tell them, you don't have to know how to build a home. But a house, an apartment, all the above, has a whole lot of moving parts, just like an automobile. And you should have a basic understanding of how they work so that you can take care of it to protect where you're sleeping, where you're living, to keep it healthy. Renee put in a great comment right there. Learned helplessness. When a person is consistently given everything without being required to take responsibility or solve problems or contribute in return. Absolutely. And I'm probably gonna bum a few people out, but a good portion of this is a parental issue. Well, I ain't got time to teach them that. Oh, my parents never taught me that. Well, if it started with your parents at this point in time, with access to the internet, whether it be a phone or a laptop, or, obviously if you're listening to this right now, you have some understanding of how to get on the internet. Break the cycle. Learn how to do this stuff. Reach out to people like myself. I've started noticing a few more people on the internet. Like one guy, I forget what he called his channel, but it was something like Lessons from Dad. And he just walked around the property and did the same type of reels that I was doing. So find them, learn how to take care of the domicile that you're in. And Dave put in another great comment. Part of the problem is a lot of people are allowed to work from home now, so they don't feel the need to drive anymore. And of course, since now that they're pushing all of these 15-minute cities and building these apartment complexes that have the restaurants and the gym and when I was in San Diego taking care of the college rentals, they had all of these multi-purpose buildings where it was apartments on top and all of the retail stuff along the bottom. And a good portion of these kids, they didn't have to go anywhere. They could come downstairs, take a walk down the sidewalk, and there were all the food, and there was the clothing place across the street, and the apartment guy fixed all of their issues in their domicile that they broke. And all they had to do was argue a little bit about why they had to fix what they broke. I know, because I was the guy that showed up to fix what they broke. And the more I talk to guys that are like me, fixing all the stuff, the more we realize that we're thin. The group of us that fix everything is thinning out. Renee.
Sorry, I'm doing exactly what you're talking about. I'm working from home and listening. And I couldn't imagine not working from home now because it saves me 3 hours a day.
Mhm.
So I can just get up, take care of the animals, take care of my husband. I can work in my PJs. If I've got a meeting, then I can, dress up from the waist up and, stay in my
Upperwear.
sweat. What? Yeah. Yeah. Stay in my
Upperwear.
sweats.
Yes.
But I think we've got a huge problem. I really do. And my husband sees it too. He maintains commercial printers. So he troubleshoots the network. He deals with the mechanical end. He deals with the software end. He deals with hydraulics. Like there's a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
And he's in the process of training up a new hire. And he goes, they don't even really understand computers like we do
Yes.
because everything's an app. And, he's asking about experience, how to do this, because a lot of it is troubleshooting the network and seeing how the printer is talking to the computer system. He goes, oh, well, I've downloaded these apps. And he goes, and it really dawned on him. They don't even understand the basics of programming. Like
Yes. everything
everything is very much punch and play.
Mhm.
And I'm seeing that even at my work. It's like they were given the information. They can't interpolate. Like you're given a set of rules to follow, and then you've got to apply them in these different situations. And they can't interpolate. They can't solve that problem. If it's very clear, like a test, black and white, yes, no, this is what we're solving, they can do that. But then you get into the real world where nothing is black and white. It's shades of gray. And you're going to have to, it's not just a square peg, square hole. You've got a square peg and now you've got an octagonal hole that's 2 sizes too small. And how are you going to adjust that peg to make it fit? And it's like they can't, they can't get between point A to point B.
Yeah.
And these are going to be the people taking care of us in our old age, and they can't even take care of themselves.
Yeah. I hate to turn this into complaint hour, but no, 100%. I took care of college houses for 15 years. And I know that, our grandparents complained about our parents' generation, and we complained about, here we are complaining about this generation, but I witnessed enough stuff that really had me concerned. I had one young man, I'm saying young, he was, I think, a junior in college, proved to me he didn't know how to change a standard light bulb. He was like, well, while you're in here, that light bulb's been out and I said, well, change it. I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, hold on, Bucky. I'll be right back. So I went out to the van, grabbed a light bulb, put it in his hand, and he's sitting there looking at it. And then I took the cover off of the light fixture, which was 3 little screws, and brought the light. And he's still looking at it. And I said, I'll give you $5. Figure out how to do it. And his reply, he put both of them on the table and said, I don't need to know how to do it. That's why we got people like you. And went back to his room to play his computer game that he knows how to get to level 9,000 and gives me a hard time because I can barely play Pac-Man. I just haven't learned how to make money playing Pac-Man.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of that. And I get frustrated with that comment a lot. And then everybody knows right now who Nikola Tesla is. A lot of it's because of the Tesla cars. But
Mhm.
and I go, that man lost everything and dug ditches for 2 years. And this is the person that we accredit with the electrical system that we use today.
Yeah.
If he can dig ditches for 2 years, you can help out. I work in a small company. I'm a senior level engineer. I mainly do review. If my boss needs me to come in and help put together reports, that's what I got to do because you got to wear all hats. You need to be involved with every aspect of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it doesn't always work out to be the most efficient, but it's really this realization if they're not interacting with a screen, they don't know what to do.
Yes. And Dave sent in a comment of how many of them have no idea how to tell time on an analog clock. And Guillermo just put in the comments that he has the same feeling with new engineers, and they want to be managers the day after they get into the company. They don't know things and they don't want to learn. They just want easy money. Oh,
Yeah.
I met those the seniors in college cracked me up. They're like, I'm going to be senior management. I'm like, you're going to be senior unemployed until you understand that you have a degree that proves that you know how to follow directions and how to memorize stuff in a book. But you have no hands-on experience at all.
Yeah, I don't understand why anybody would think management is easy money. That's the part that cracks me up because it's not. You try to manage engineers. It's the equivalent of herding cats. You try to get 5 engineers to go in the same direction and come to a reasonable conclusion at the end. I want to see that happen and have you not rip out all your hair. Management means that you're on call, even after hours, because you're not just dealing with the work, you're having to deal with all of their personal issues too.
Well, one of my squirrels, who's kind of funny, just brought me a scenario. Yes, it's like herding cats, but you can herd cats if you have the right food, which is the money. But if you have to herd cats to be good hunters, after they've been getting the easy food from mom and dad for a long time, they don't want to chase the mouse.
Mm.
Not if mom and dad were giving them tender victuals their whole life. And they may have heard the theory of catching the mouse. But they certainly, that's a lot of work. What do you mean I have to wait till the mouse shows up and then I have to chase it and then I have to really fight with it and I got to catch it and then I have to... I want the tender victuals. Well, I'm sure you do, Sparky. Guillermo put in, haha, I agree with Renee. No one in this day wants to deal with the others and work in a team. They think it's too complicated and they want someone else to do the hard work. Yes. Yeah, I've had to deal with many of them.
You're talking about. Oops, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. I'll get off my soapbox.
You mentioned young people not knowing how to read an analog clock, right?
Yes.
I have a big old GE one up on hanging in my workshop here, and a vintage antique. My 20-year-old son, who's very bright, he works during the day, he works at home on game development, very bright. I trained him from an early age. I told him that when he hits 18, the free ride is over. The day after his 18th birthday is when he starts to work and pay his way, which he's done very well, thank God. So he has many talents and abilities. He's very bright. I mean, on a computer, it's like he's way above what I'm able to do. But if I tell him that I'm going out, I'll be back at quarter of, what else? A half past, or something like that. That's not digital. It's not that he can't do it. He won't do it. He refuses. Right? It's almost like that's old school. It's not relevant anymore. I don't need to know it. Nobody's going to do that in the future. And he just won't. And I know he's just messing with me. If I say quarter of, he knows what I'm talking about. He goes, "What do you mean? What time is that?" Like at 1:45 or half past. What does that mean? It's 1:30. So he's just breaking my chops. But it's that weird like resistance to, is it because it's old? Is it because it's analog? Is it because it's archaic? Is it too convoluted, too complex? I don't know. It's very, very strange.
Yeah. One of my neighbor kids watched me looking at my clock and had a sundial out on the front porch.
Oh my God.
And I turned the sundial to my watch and he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm setting the clock." And he could not grasp that concept whatsoever. And I said, if you don't figure out that, sometime there'll be times where it will save your bacon. Dave put in the comment, there are some college diplomas that come with a McDonald's application stapled to them. Fran.
Well, coming in on the butt end of this conversation and talking about analog watches, I've noticed that when I'm in trance and when I'm channeling, I cannot read an analog clock. I can read a digital clock, but I cannot read an analog clock. And there's something about the parts of my brain that are activated that won't let me do it. It makes no sense at all. And I just thought that might be something to throw into the conversation about different parts of your brain that get activated at different times. I think it's the same with map reading. Some people can do it easily, some people can't. Spelling, I'm dyslexic. Some people, over time, I've overcome a lot of those parts, but you can teach people to use different parts of their brain for particular activities. But I do notice that when I'm using my primitive brain, which is what gets activated either in channel or a trance, it does not have access to the analog interpretation information.
And how we brought this up was basic life skills and the unfortunate apparent deterioration of the youngest generations now. And some of the stuff we brought up was basic cooking, driving skills, operating driving a manual transmission vehicle, and reading an analog clock and things of that nature. And I'm sure with you, with working with firefighters and stuff like that, how many new young firefighters are coming on that understand like how building construction, stuff like that. I know if you're a firefighter, you got to have some pretty decent understanding of how a building is built, so you don't when you see a fire in a certain area, you go, that's structural, not good, versus the siding's on fire, we're going to blast it down. So
I also see a lack of curiosity, which to me is really strange. Like, I want to know, like, everything that comes across my plate, I may not understand it, but I will attempt to understand it, get some, maybe a basic understanding, or if I find that it could be useful in my life, or I could share some help with somebody else. I always want to know. Seems like younger people, they like, I don't know what it is, brain laziness, or they think they don't have enough room in their head to keep all this information. This lack of curiosity and self-sufficiency.
yes.
Right? Like, I'm capable. If my phone stopped working for a month, I would survive. Young people would not. They would walk around like a zombie in disbelief that this thing isn't working because it's never not worked, right? How do I eat? How do I talk to my friends? How do I survive? So we have become self-sufficient and unafraid and confident by being curious, by asking questions, knowing that the more that I know, the more I understand, the more I can do, the more I can assist other people, the larger my sphere of capabilities become.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the curiosity part. I'm going to turn this into a question or a topic for the group. One of the things that they brought up with the lack of curiosity is the access to Google and the access on our phones. We no longer have to sit and ponder and think of, it's like, well, I wonder when so-and-so was born. We don't have to memorize history. Oh, they were born September 17th, 1972, and they were married to so-and-so for so. Well, I wonder how much is it baking soda or baking powder that you can add to coffee to make it not. It's right there. You use it. So the younger generation doesn't have to invest the amount of time in curiosity and ponderance anymore, because they have the knowledge of knowing that all they got to do is grab their phone and an answer will come up. But I think it's also stunted their memorization capacity as well.
And their retention too, right? I would think they would tend to retain the less information.
Yeah.
Right, like that birthday or the baking soda rather than baking powder on the coffee, that kind of thing. They get the information, they might utilize it then and there, but they may not retain it on purpose because they go, shit, if I forget it, screw it, I'll just look it up again. So is there a part of their brains that are not being developed because of that kind of thing, right?
Great question. Yeah. Michael's got his hand up.
I agree with that.
I knew you'd have the answer.
I don't have the answer, but I do agree with their brain is not growing in certain areas because of the laziness. But as far as curiosity, I believe that if you take a kid out camping and you get them away from the instant response and the instant gratifications they get from having the phone, I think that their brain would grow. I think they would find curiosity and they would look into different ways, but it's how you bring the kids up. And unfortunately, the way kids are brought up now, for the majority, here's your iPad, go do this, go do that, and they're not stuck where they have to go play outside and go do the things that we did. That's why it is the best generation. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
But with helicopter parents and all the things, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, and it's like, no, man, let them go bump their heads and drink from the hose and chew on paint, see what happens. Just say it.
Yeah, I've had a couple of young kids that I played the just lay down and what do you see in the clouds? What shapes do you see in the clouds? Fran, you got your hand up.
Do you remember what we used to think about our parents and grandparents and how out of sync they were with the world?
Yeah.
But Einstein was also one of these people way back who said, you know, why clutter your head with available information when it's available? Why would you bother to remember it? There's no incentive. But the interaction with reality versus virtual reality is of concern.
But also how tough our grandparents were and the things that they did. I mean, you think about it seriously. If you put me out in the wild, I can't do the stuff that my grandparents did. You know, I'd learn or I'd die.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, I remember the both Einstein and Henry Ford were famous for that attitude of Einstein was asked what his phone number was, and he said, well, who's got a phone book? And they're like, you don't know your phone number? He goes, I own a phone book at home. Look it up. And Henry Ford, they said, well, they asked him a question about his Model T. And he said, well, let me get my engineer in here. And they said, this is your company and you don't understand this? He goes, I don't have to. I have people that understand it. I'm the one that's smart enough to put the people together.
It's kind of like the story with Albert Einstein when he was going with his with his chauffeur. And his chauffeur took him everywhere. And the chauffeur said something, they traded spots. He said, man, I know your stuff so well. I can go up there and I can give your presentation. And Einstein let him do it. And then somebody from the audience asked him, hey, man, what's the question is? Dude, that's so easy. My chauffeur would know the answer. And then he pointed to Albert Einstein, and Einstein tells him the story. Answers the question. Just saying.
And we've got some good comments in here as well. Guillermo put in, I agree with the new generation's lack of curiosity. It's what they have, and they are just attached to the new technology and an easy way to Google it. And now you have the new meta glasses that does it for you just like that. And Renee put in, falls back to learned helplessness. Falls back to learned people who have repeated experiences of having little control or influence over the world around them may stop exploring solutions to problems because they believe their efforts do not matter. Holly's got her hand up.
Oh, sorry. I just had this, I'd forgotten about this, but this conversation just brought me back to this talk. I think it was called the $5 tomato. It was given back in the 70s. I don't even remember by whom, but they were talking about, because a bunch of people were saying, I don't have a garden. I'm not going to grow a tomato because it costs so much money to grow a tomato versus I could just go to the grocery store, get it for, this is back in the day, but, like maybe a quarter or something like that. And the whole point of this talk was, I don't care if it costs you $5 for that tomato to grow it. The process of getting to know your food and getting in one with nature and knowing you have that life skill is worth it, even if it's going to cost you $5 to grow that tomato. And something I don't know how to do, like my own meat. I couldn't do that if I absolutely needed to do, but it helps, the gratitude, the understanding, the appreciation, looking for what risks are. You don't know any of that if you've never done the process.
And Renee put in the comments, that's what people tell me about my chickens. Yeah, and I know that Duncan got into growing some vegetables as well. And what'd you notice about the difference between your store-bought and your grown vegetables?
Oh, first and foremost, flavor. Oh my gosh. My grandparents had a place up in New York State where it was that rich volcanic soil and water, from an aquifer under the ground. You could eat a tomato like an apple. It was so sweet. So first one, flavor, texture, the aroma from it, all of it. It's real. It's just, it's wow, the real deal. No pesticides, no chemicals, just organic.
Yeah.
Now that was my first foray into tomatoes, so I got some, but I, like so many other things, I found that growing tomatoes on the surface seems really simple, right? You go to Home Depot or seeds, right? You get some seeds, put in the ground in the sun, ready to germinate, blah, 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 and you're going to get a million tomatoes. But didn't quite happen. So I'm still trying. I got a couple new ones coming up. So
Yeah.
Yeah, real versus what factory made, I guess.
And then you watch people like on social media. There's a guy named Meat Dad
Mm-hmm.
who was a butcher for many years, who takes the time to teach people how to identify different cuts of meat in larger chunks of meat to save money.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll find, I'm pretty sure he's got like meta glasses or something, and he'll be in like Costco, and he'll see people looking at these cuts of steak at $25 a pound. And he goes, hey, let me show you something. This here big chunk of meat for $11 a pound has 7 of those cuts in it. And they're like, what? He goes, yeah, you just dip and you cut it this way, and you trim off the fat. You save the fat for making hamburger with all the trimmings that you take off of the edges of this big cut. And now you've got fresh hamburger, you got 7 steaks, and it's $11 a pound instead of $28 a pound.
Mm-hmm. I saw a guy do a 400-pound, I don't know if it's the whole cow or half of it, 400-pound, and he had it laid out on a table after he
Yes.
had butchered it. Oh my God, all the steaks and the chopped meat and the bones, and it's like a year's worth of meat, beef, for a family of, I don't know, 3 or 4, for a couple of bucks a pound.
Which is why back in the day, Grandpa would have the family cow that they raised for the meat to get them through the winter.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, 1 cow? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there, and I've been blessed, I think, out of exposure crossed with necessity. I'm pretty affluent at taking care of myself, and I know that if I crash landed on a deserted island and there was animals on there, now I'm not going to say all of them because we've got a representative from Australia, and I would be scared senseless because I know that I wouldn't know if I should approach any of those animals out there, because you guys
Don't eat kangaroo liver. It's got too much vitamin A.
See?
And polar bear.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I know that I could build a shelter real quick, and I know how to filter water enough to make it healthy and stuff like that. And that's the part that I worry about. A lot of people that are so comfortable with technology and urbanization that if something were to happen.
Not to mention the spiders and snakes in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
You got snakes there too. Maybe not the same,
No.
but marine snakes are probably more dangerous anyway if you get them cranky.
Oh, I love you guys. And here we are. 2 hours went zip again, just like that. I'm so glad you guys show up every week. It still blows my mind that we've done this 238 times.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And I know for a fact if it wasn't for y'all, I would not be here 238 times. You're the reason I keep showing up. So thank you so much. And Guillermo put in a great comment for as well for you guys. Said, by the way, this team is amazing because it's full of curiosity, full of energy to understand and learn how things work by reading or listening or learning from others. That exposure makes us do better and expand our knowledge and mindset. Yes, that's another reason why I come back here, and I feel so honored to have all of you joining from all over the place where you're from and the knowledge that you bring here. So thank you so much. Love you all. And I also get to say, love you, Mom. Miss you. Hope to see you back here in 7 beautiful days. Go out and enjoy life. Live it as much as you can. Until then, I'll see you later. Bye.
Nice. Hi, friend.
Is Lenora coming back next week?
She heard you. Yeah, she's on the road. They're heading back right now, sounds like.